Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Brooks Rayford, CEO of NC Tech, and welcome to this briefing on the release of our quarterly leadership poll. As some of you know from watching before, for the past few years, we have conducted a quarterly poll that asks some consistent questions about general business sentiment. Sometimes we include a timely question, and this most recent poll did have a question about inflation predictions on the part of the respondents. And so we'll get to that in a bit. This final quarterly poll of 2025 was conducted from October 8 through 10, and we are releasing the results of those responses today. You will find this on our website at nctech.org/pulse. We polled about 350 people, made up of members of our board of directors, our board of advisors, CEOs of tech companies within our membership that are headquartered in North Carolina, and then leaders of large tech hubs or sites whose are based in North Carolina, but whose companies are not headquartered here. Our sponsoring partner since the inception of these polls has been the Stearns Financial Group, and their founder, Dennis Stearns, serves on the NC Tech Board of Advisors. And as usual, he joins me today to offer some of his observations from the latest poll. So welcome, Dennis, and thank you for your support of this.
Thank you, Brooks. Good to be here.
Glad to have you. All right, so I'll walk through the results and highlight some areas where we've seen maybe some shifts in sentiment and activities from the past poll, or where things have remained fairly consistent. And my colleague Alex will be the one walking us through, so you can move on to the next slide. The first few slides are demographic in nature, just to give you a flavor of the makeup of the respondents to the poll. And you'll see here the breakdown of employee size within North Carolina. This is probably not reflective of the broader business community because the vast majority of companies and organizations have very small numbers of employees. Only a certain number are large. The respondents of this poll, because it comes from leadership and our board of directors, advisors, et cetera, tends to skew a little bit larger, but you'll see still a fairly substantial chunk are from mid-sized and small companies, and then it goes down from there. Next. This graphic reflects the percentage of the respondents whose company is headquartered in North Carolina, and as is typical or has proven typical, this split is very on target with NC Tech's membership base. So about 2/3 of our members are headquartered in the state, and the respondents also reflect that. Next. We ask about people's role within the organization. You can select more than one, but we skew very heavily to C-suite and IT leadership, as you might expect. You can see the breakdown there. Next. So now we get into some of the sentiment questions. This one is, we asked two questions back to back. This first one has to do with how do you feel the past quarter has been for the tech sector broadly? The next question, which I'll get to in a moment, ask people about their perception of how their own company or organization has done in the past quarter. So this first one shows that a very tiny percentage, which thankfully is typical, says terrible. This is again about the sector broadly. Slightly disappointing, about 11% when rounding. Okay, about 41. Good, about 42. And great, about 6. And what we see here is it's very stable from the past quarter. In fact, either identical or a point away from what it was the last quarter, and even the quarter before that. So this year has been pretty stable in these responses, and about how they perceive the sector has done overall. The next slide, Alex, if you go there, is about how do you feel the past quarter was for your own organization? And again, still a fairly small percent say terrible or slightly disappointing. Okay, around 33%. Good, a little better than that, and great, almost 15%. So there was some shift in this one slide. There was some shift from last time from good to okay. So maybe a slight moderation of positivity. But we again see notably more positive responses about one's own organization than the sector as a whole. The great is 15% here. For the sector, great was 6%, for example. And so that's encouraging. But if you take groupings, Dennis, you and I spoke about this before we went live today. If you kind of group good and great together, It's very similar total number or percentage there, about half, just under half, say good or great. And the terrible through okay is the other half. And so it's actually fairly, I guess, atypically similar, historically speaking, in terms of people's positivity about their own organization versus the sector broadly. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, so definitely some shift this quarter. And, in the age of disruption, with all the uncertainty we have swirling around right now, not terribly surprising that there would be some tempering of enthusiasm, curbing of enthusiasm. Uh, and I think the interesting thing overall, the Federal Reserve of Atlanta's latest numbers say that the economy should grow nicely in the fourth quarter, but underlying that data is a lot of sectors having trouble. So this is, a few years ago we had the rolling recession issue, and I know some of our members are experiencing some of that with the people that they sell or the companies they sell their goods or services to.
Yeah, you hear from a broad variety of sectors in your work. So it's good to get that perspective. The next, we start looking ahead in the next slide, which is I expect that over the next quarter, our business will decline, stay the same, or grow. And what we saw here is a bit of a shift, about 5 points moved from grow to stay the same. Um, and so that again reflects a bit of a tempering or curbing of enthusiasm. The decline number is actually on trend to be lower. So we saw a real spike in the early part of this year, the second quarter actually, of those who thought it would decline. And since then, both last quarter and this quarter, it's only about half of the Q2. Prior to Q2, for 2 years running, it was a very low, 1 or 2 percentage points would say decline. On the grow side of things, we've been pretty steadily in the 50s, low 60s for a few quarters. But prior to that, it was more like 70 plus in 2024. So some moderation, but from last quarter to this one, about a 5 point move from grow to stay the same, with decline staying about the same. Dennis, do you think that's similarly reflective of what you were saying before?
Yeah, pretty much. And again, if you go to sectors beyond technology, I think there would be more curbing of enthusiasm even than you see on this chart, which suggests that technology is still a relatively good place to be.
Hmm. Yeah. All right. The next slide has to do with hiring and overall headcount. We worded this in such a way to account for the fact that companies could be hiring at the same time that they're either through attrition or laying off, seeing some positions go away, but what's their net behavior? So reducing headcount about 10.5%, maintaining headcount about 50%, increasing headcount about 39%. Um, Interestingly, slightly better than last quarter. We see about a 4 point improvement in increasing headcount from last quarter. Maintaining headcount remains exactly the same, right at 50%, and it's been there all year. It's either been 50 or 51% for that question at maintaining headcount for all of 2025 so far. And then reducing headcount 11, that's down a few ticks from last quarter, but up from historic numbers. It's just been again this year that reducing headcount has even approached or went into double digits. Before that, even as recently as Q1, it was 5% or less, and it was that way for the previous 2 years. Um, so I'll pause there and see, Dennis, if you have any comments about what you're hearing about the investment that people are making in increasing their headcount, or are they being cautious for now?
Yeah, well, the overall numbers are very interesting and odd at the same time. We have basically a lot of companies who are not doing much hiring, but they're not doing much firing either.
Mhm.
So, this phenomenon literally only happens every decade or 15 years. So it's sort of an unusual time we're going through, and there's a little bit of we're replacing entry level people with Chat GPT or AI tools or whatever, but I don't think that has gained significant traction yet. Again, these numbers will be interesting to look at in 2026 and 2027.
Certainly will. Yes. All right, Alex, if you'll advance us, we ask a couple of questions, or a question or two each time that are new or a one-off for that poll. Been a lot of news, chatter, and commentary and predictions and so forth about inflation coming back in 2026 for any number of reasons, which I won't speculate on, but you all read what I'm reading. So we thought we'd ask, and as you see here, a majority feel that they are concerned about inflation coming back in 2026 in a way that would impact their cost of business. Uh, just under a quarter say they do not expect that, and about a fifth say unsure. Dennis, first of all, you're in the financial world business. So do you have opinions on this yourself? And then what are you hearing from people that you talk to?
Yeah, it certainly is clear that there may be some additional costs coming through the supply chains in the fourth quarter and into 2026. So far, inflation has been okay, but not great. I mean, it tempered off, and then everybody thought maybe it would get down as low as 2%, but it has stayed a little stubbornly higher. And the other interesting thing is we just participated in a think tank on the impact of artificial intelligence in the future on inflation versus deflation. And a lot of the elements were deflationary. So you have a lot, it goes back to the uncertainty piece, a lot of things kind of swirling together at this unique point of history. I think companies are uh, well served to be a bit cautious on what inflation will be, depending on their vendors and what kind of products or services they're providing.
Good, thank you, thank you. Alex, if you move next, we have a couple of questions each time that are open-ended. So we ask, what makes you optimistic about the next 12 months? And of course, we follow that with what concerns you about the next 12 months. And as often is the case, you see some of the same words or phrases on both slides because some people are optimistic. For example, on this slide, you see that interest rates are an area. Some people feel like that inflation will be cooling. The size of the words tell you how prominent they were in the answer. So AI-driven transformation or just AI impact. The state's business environment is always pretty positive sentiment we find in in these responses, and economic stability and growth. Again, North Carolina is pretty well positioned there generally. So if you move then to the next slide, you'll see what people are concerned about. And again, you see inflation. In this case, people worried about inflation, people worried about data security and a few technical things here, but mainly impact of tariffs and economic factors, geopolitical tension, reduced government spending. Um, I'll just mention we noticed just before going onto this live webinar that the word government had dropped to the N, and so we fixed that right quick. But we thought well, maybe N had gotten laid off this week, so we put it back in, hired him back. Um, and political uncertainty, political instability, with the government shutdown in particular being a driver there. So Dennis, just seeing those two slides back to back on what people are optimistic about and what they're concerned about, I think it tracks a bit of what you said already, but are there any things that jump out at you here?
Yeah, the AI transformation piece, AI is kind of sucking the oxygen out of the room all the time now about AI this and AI that for the future. And there's no question that there's massive amounts of money being invested in AI. The question is, will a rising tide lift all boats? And some of the productivity numbers, MIT came out here recently and said, yeah, some of these chat GPT projects and companies are not living up to their expectations. But we are seeing some momentum in a positive direction there. So again, I think 2026 will be an interesting year for how much transformation does AI really do to an organization. And transformation is one of those double-edged sword words. If you're thinking about it from a productivity, from an improved profitability viewpoint, it could be very good. If you're the person in an organization who isn't being transformed, in other words, if you're the marginal person on the bubble in an organization, it's problematic. So, again, this is a age of disruption. You want to be indispensable to whatever organization that you're involved with.
Indeed, indeed. And I think there's a lot of talk about, the mindset being that AI hopefully can be an additive thing to any individual contributor in making them more productive, making us all more productive, being able to do more than we can do now, not necessarily replacing everybody. No doubt, like with every technology, some individuals' roles will go away. Maybe entire functions transition away from individuals doing them. But for a lot of people, it's an opportunity to really be far more productive, and just figuring out how to make that happen for yourself and your organization is really the trick. All right.
Yep.
Alex, I think that brings us to the conclusion. As I said earlier, nctech.org/pulse is where you will see this recording, and the slide deck will be there sometime soon once we get everything edited and posted there. Thank you very much to you, Dennis, and the Stearns Financial Group for sponsoring this polling series. And for now, we thank you all for viewing and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Brooks.